All right. All right. Hi. After much ado, 8 minutes. It's not half bad. It takes me longer than that to figure out how to use the one button on our microwave. So I don't understand why it is that everything gets so complicated by getting so simple these days. But all right. So this week it was suggested by the conference to change over to this different topic here. So full switch happened last night. Yeah. So I'm going to stumble my way through it, but here's what's important about this, is that this is a topic that's pretty important to a lot of us these days, which is basically how do we toe that fine line as being industry folks who need to be focused on protecting people, disclosing information when appropriate for the greater good, while not doing anything that's going to be illegal, lead other people astray, or cause problems. It's really, really tricky. You know, I've had an interesting transition through this career myself, because when I started, I was really a middle schooler, and going through NT pre-4 to NT, and through that time period, the birth of SANS, the organization of a lot of groups in the industry where there wasn't organization before, and getting to see that through the eyes of a high schooler and a middle schooler was pretty kick-ass. I'm not gonna lie. It gave me a perspective that I never would have had. I had a few mishaps along the way where I towed that line and learned very quickly that the pot is hot when it looks red. And through that, I've had a couple different interesting perspectives. Also had the good pleasure of working out in the Bay Area for a while and getting to learn from people who are a lot smarter than I'll ever be. And so thanks to a lot of that, I've steered so far correctly. Now that said, I'm not a researcher the way that most people that are great researchers are. I get ideas and I try to get people on board with them and help steer them in a direction that they're going to be successful. So I'll never be the one out there finding the latest and greatest at all. But I also do feel like we have a duty that's emerged, and I'm very duty focused, and I believe that there's been a massive change that's happened, and I think that we're having a hard time with that change as an industry right now. And so that's what this kind of comes down to be. Now, just out of curiosity, how many people in here would put themselves in the hacker category? All right, about half. That's cool. That's great. And it's funny because a lot of the people in the room who are older than 30 probably know what that meant in a different way than what a lot of people now would say. So that's a really big deal. We get a lot of new recruits at Rook who they just want to hack, and they want to do as much pen testing as possible, and that's all they want to do. And it's an interesting thing to see what the difference in mindset is from when originally it was, how do we make sure that this system isn't going to kill somebody, or how do we make sure that there's not a major vulnerability that's going to mess up all of EMS and the response times throughout the country or through the city or municipality. It's all changed a lot. So here's the sketch for what we're going to go through here in the next 50 minutes, or 40 minutes. I don't know. What time is this thing? 47 minutes. Fantastic. So here's what we're going to go through. We're going to go through a little bit of the background on what the hell I'm talking about. I've got a challenge statement for everybody to think about, and then some sketches and the illustrations applied, and back to the challenge statement. Now, along the way, we might get derailed, which is kind of cool. So that'd be great. I would totally welcome people to contribute to this. I'll manage that accordingly. But this is a really important topic, and I'm very grateful that there's quite a few people in the room here today, because it seems like it might be something that either means something to you or you got bait and switched by the Obama cybersecurity original topic. So if that's the case, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry to the 4 of you. Wasn't my idea, but I like where we ended up. Okay, so it's an interesting thing, and it does tie into a little bit of that. So I'll make a little tight connection at some point on that topic. So, pardon me for reading for a second, but I'm going to. We live in historic times right now in the information security space, and I don't say that lightly, and I don't try to overblow that at the same time. we're at a massive point in how this industry is going to respond and be prepared to taking care of the future. Everything has changed. In the 90s, you know, there was this emerging nascent thing that was really trying to get people from stop focusing on firewalls, focusing on host security and security design principles and secure coding principles that still are struggling to take root. In the late 90s, it became about organization as an industry to start making substantial change where people were pushing rocks uphill. 2000s, it really became about compliance, and everybody got led astray. And thank you, SOX, for making our life miserable. But you know, that really changed things because security companies learned that to sell, they had to masquerade as compliance companies and sell GRC solutions. And then a lot of people got wagged around. What am I in security, compliance? What is this thing? You can see that through Veritas, for what happened with Symantec and Veritas. A lot of things have changed. But we're not sitting around anymore, sitting on the perimeter trying to protect the monitor the firewall and shore up defenses and, you know, talking about doomsday, right? I mean, doomsday is here almost every day. And hopefully you've got the right controls in place to be able to detect it and be able to respond to it. Most places still don't, which is shocking. So, you know, no longer is a time where we're begging for funds and complaining that we don't get them. And if only they had given us the funds, we could have been able to save the world, and none of the people at the corporate level would have had to worry about this, and we saw it coming, and all the things that historically this industry has been able to get away with saying. Now it's different. You know, the threat is real, the threat is visible. It always has been real and visible. And what's changed is that instead of it being a situation where we have to be begging and borrowing for scraps and going to our friends at other companies in this grassroots effort to try to be able to, good God, good job, Arlie. So what was that? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2? Okay. Instead of having to beg, borrow, and steal, you know, and again, back to the late 90s and early 2000s, you know, one of the coolest things that I ever got to experience was sitting around a SAN speaker room and listening to all the brilliant minds talk about all the cool stuff they're inventing. And these groups were people who were in parts of larger organizations who were given the luxury of going off into a little cave somewhere and dreaming up things and making them become reality, and that someday that'll be useful. That was really kick-ass. It was a really exciting time, you know. Now, it's different. You know, we aren't sitting there talking about what's coming and how the sky's falling. We're talking about, oh shit, the sky's falling in big chunks every day. And now everybody's turning to us and saying, what do we do? How are we going to fix this? How are we going to stop this? And there's no place to hide anymore. And so that's a big deal, because it's no longer about theory. It's about, you know, where does the metal meet the meat here, guys, gals? Where does the metal meet the meat? Are we able to be successful with all the stuff we've told everybody that we knew how to do? If only they'd give us what we needed to be successful. Now they're saying you can have anything you need to be successful. What are you going to do with it and prove it, and how fast can you get it done? All of things that now make us under the microscope and measured in the way that every other business unit in the world gets measured, but we're not comfortable with because we've never had all the resources we need to be successful. So it's a different world. It's a different ballgame. You know, and the media is covering it daily. We're asked to be their sheepdogs. You know, and people, there's no one else in the world who's better positioned to be a sheepdog than everybody in this room and at this conference. Nobody. Nobody knows this stuff inside and out the way that this group does. But with that comes responsibility, especially in times like this. So, you know, they're turning to us and saying, you know, how do you protect us? How do you protect us from the wolves? And now, what just sickens me is that in this time of need, can you disable that? All right. Approved. I accept the risk of you degrading our control environment around your endpoint, Arlie. In this time of great need, what's happening is that we're seeing more and more people wave the white flag and say we can't do it. And that just pisses me off. It really pisses me off. It makes me sick. I've lost so much respect for our industry in the last couple of years because people aren't stepping up to the challenge. Now, not everybody, mind you, but I'm just sick of this. Because we can do something about this, and we know how to do something about this, but we haven't been formally prepared to be in a position where we had what we needed to be successful and do so in a way that would be able to be measurable. So it's a different ballgame. While he's doing that, I'll pull this up on my phone here real quick. Make sure I don't. I've got so many thoughts on this topic. I had to put notes in here because otherwise I was going to end up way off the deep end. Because it's a hot topic for me. So basically, what we get to is really the challenge statement, and this challenge statement is exciting to me because what it does is it really sets the stage for what people are looking at us to be. So I was trying to think of all the different ways to compare this, and Tom Gorup is one of our he's our security operations lead and former military, and he's infused some ideas into my head, which I've really appreciated. But one of them is basically being a sheepdog, right? So what does it really mean? You need to have a vision for success. You need to break down challenges into its component parts, lead to successful outcomes, ask for help along the way, instill confidence and comfort. And that's the most important part that I feel like we're not doing right now, is instilling confidence and comfort that we understand this stuff and we can help everybody. So at the end of the day, yeah, we're all here to save the world to a certain degree too. And to some variant or another, I still believe that most people in this industry have their heart in the right place and are intending to go out there and do great things. So part of this comes down to trust. And I don't want to see hands or anything, but it's something to think about. Are you as an individual worthy of trust? Are you somebody who is a trustworthy person? Are you somebody who trusts yourself? If there's a major problem, and that is that when people are listening to the media, they don't know if they can trust us now. And it's because a lot of terms are getting bastardized and a lot of terms are being anchored around incidents or situations that people don't understand, and that media drives fear, and if it bleeds, it leads, right? So there's a lot of problems out there. And as this becomes more visible, it's a bigger problem. You know, we've got up the road here, I don't know if I even say this in here somewhere, but there's a diner called Cheryl's. It's up, its famous slogan is "Eat here and get gas," right? Not exactly the best slogan, but it's sticky. So they're up the road here, up 31 near Tipton, and I've been going there since I was a kid. Farmers, it's a little farmer's diner, fantastic place to eat. The menu hasn't changed in 30 years, and it's a great place. Farmers up there will be drinking their coffee and talking about, gosh, can we trust these guys? Is this something, who's going to solve this problem? And they lump us in with the bad guys in that environment. And it's hard for me to sit there and hear all that. But the board members, grandmas, CIOs, marketing people, they don't understand what we do in our little crazy black bag of tricks that they throw money into every now and then, and sometimes they get something out of that might be useful. So it scares them. So how do they know when they're looking from the outside in? How would I know looking at this room if it's full of sheepdogs or wolves? I don't. I hope. I have faith, but I don't know. So why is this? This is where it starts to get a little tricky, and we start to get closer to that thin ice here on my side. So I'm going to be very careful as I go through this. But in my opinion, the reason that we're running into a lot of these challenges with perception are because people are out there garnering media attention who reflect negatively upon our industry. All right? They make legislators reconsider what their thoughts are about who's good and who's bad. Farmers discuss what needs to be done about these hackers and not understanding that they're hopefully not talking about us. And that sucks. It makes me sad, to be completely honest. It makes me sad. I've committed my life to this career, and I've been doing that since I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, because I grew up around Gene Spafford and Gene Schultz from Purdue. I believe in it, It really, really sucks. So individuals can drive fear through their words, behaviors, tweets, and a lot of this is now getting media attention, and so it's a new thing for our industry. People don't know how important they are. You may not know how important you are and what kind of voice and what kind of microphone you have these days. It's different than it was before. There's this direct end around 10 layers of management that get directly out to CNN these days for anybody that's sitting in this room. It's a different ballgame. It's a different ballgame. So, it's really concerning because it's easy to detract from our image as sheepdogs, assuming that we all agree that we want to do good things. Conducting questionable or sometimes flat out illegal activities or behavior under the shield of research. which was also challenging, and play up the fears, because everybody's all about it leads, right? And so, I'm not going to lie, this last year for me, we've started doing, I don't know now, it's almost maybe 2 years, but we've been doing more PR work. And in the PR side there, they always want us to hype things up as much as possible. And we don't get a lot of PR coverage sometimes because we don't. But it was a decision that we sat down as a group of leads inside of our company and talked about how are we going to go about doing this, because it'd be really easy for us to get more attention by doing these things that aren't illegal, aren't morally wrong, aren't necessarily ethically wrong, wouldn't breach anything from our certifications, and generally would be accepted in the industry. But it's tricky. It's tricky. So when we're looking at this stuff, I get concerned when I see behaviors being carried out under the shield of research that really I don't believe are appropriate. And it's just me, and you all may not agree. You probably don't, and that's fine. But playing up the fears and leading up and coming people in this industry, which there's not enough of, by the way. Just for what it's worth, real quick, of the 100,000 graduates last year from university and degree programs, only about 6,000 had a specialty in our space, for about 100,000 net new jobs. This war is raging on, and we don't have the team yet to go out and fight this thing full on. And so if we're going to be letting anybody steer astray, that's just one more person that we don't have to help us be successful, and we really can't let that happen if we want to be successful. So my concern is that people who are leading people from the white side to other areas, directly, unintentionally, or inadvertently, a lot of times it's inadvertent, and then you have to go around and try to undo it, and it's so much harder. So this is a little bit about caution. This isn't the first time somebody's talked about this. I would never say that, but it's the first contextual time in the near term, in the recent past, that this has really come up as something that was critically important to the success of our industry. So does it matter? White, gray, black hat anymore? Does it? I don't know. I think it does. I think it matters. I think it matters a lot. And how do you tell? All right, so there's 2 cases that I want to talk about. And I've gone back and forth on whether or not even to do this. And I decided that, yes, we should. 1, because they're already out there in the public. And 2, because I think that it's important to be able to think about the context of 2 different situations juxtaposed against each other, because there are similarities and there's significant differences. So you can see the kind of rules of engagement here that I tried to sketch up here. It's just intended to say that I care a lot about this topic. I care a lot about the success of our industry, and I want to make sure that we think about these things critically, but don't, throw bombs at each other. So even though I want to at times, really want to. All right, so the first case of thinking about this from an applied perspective, and this is where I really do want to hear from you all. I want this to turn more like collaborative. I've just been talking at people, and that's pretty much useless. Shell shock. So this started for us when we saw the item at the top. Made Tom go, and made me go, So then you got tweets here from other people, differing opinions on whether or not this is good or bad. An illustration, a little bit more elaboration below, and let me make sure I say the right angle on this. So from the TroyHunt.com website, his commentary was the fantastic research, et cetera, by Rob and whatever, is what led into this, and then this snippet's pulled out. But the reason the snippet was pulled out was to talk about remote execution of an arbitrary command, and having it be something that someone else is saying and that I'm just repeating. So interesting case there, right? So this is the real question. Do we think that was research? First off, is anybody not aware of the situation that I'm referring to? Okay, 1, 2, okay. All right. Short story is a well-known researcher went out and created a script to determine how widespread is shell shock. The contents of that script from my understanding, which I'm not nearly as technical as I used to be, but actually utilized a vulnerability to then ping back to their servers to then, if that ping was successful, it was an indication that that server was susceptible to the attack. Anybody disagree with that? Okay, just asking. So in our neck of the woods, if that was anybody other than a known entity, we would be pretty aggressive about dealing with that. And we would consider that to be an infiltration, and that would theoretically be against criminal trespass in the digital space. But it's Robert Graham, and he didn't hide who he was. So is that good or bad? So my first question for you all, and I'm not, forget the definitions. The definitions don't really matter. I'm looking at subjectivity. I don't care about the definition. I just put them up there for talking points. So do you know, how many people in here feel like that was research? Okay. 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 How many people feel like it was legal? Questionable. Okay. Now, this is the fun part, because this is where I get torn too. Was what he did okay? How many people think that what he did was okay? Because that's a different question altogether. Okay. I'm not setting anybody up, and no one's looking behind them. Please don't look behind you, by the way. Which is completely unfair to everybody sitting in the front. Sir? Right. Insert it as a variable to send it to something, but there's no, but see, and then I would counter from a researcher perspective and say we don't have a good facilitation right now anywhere. There's no one set up to handle these types of problems, which I think the industry needs to solve that problem really quick. I think we need a 501c3 to be stood up. We need to, I don't want to get off, I get really excited about this because there's a need. And we've got lots of great people and great minds that could solve this problem in probably a hackathon. Well, sure, sir. Yeah, and I don't have the answer to that. And I don't want anybody else to speculate on whether or not they have that, and even if they do know the direct answer. And I literally have a piece in here that's missing that has the part, yeah. My understanding of the situation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that he got involved at the point at which, how do we quantify how widespread this is? And for whatever reasons, I don't want to speculate on reasons that people are driven or not, you know, that was, his approach was to go out and hit the internet, which is what he does, right? And quantify. What's that? So some disagreement, some agreement, right? And so there's, I don't feel like that was a responsible disclosure situation because it wasn't him. He didn't identify this. He didn't do the research that discovered it. The folks who did had reached out to the founders of Bash and tried to, I don't remember who they were, but they tried to, I don't remember the timeline, I don't remember any of that stuff, and it doesn't matter to me because what we're looking at here is that the short end of it is that what my question would be, how did this help the greater good? And there are ways that it helped the greater good. There was sample code out there that could be utilized and modified to test your own environment. There was more of a quantification of the problem. But does that set a precedent that maybe isn't a precedent that we want to have moving forward? What if it had taken servers down? What if it? I mean, there's. I completely agree, but not in this case. See, and that's the part. What you just said, I completely agree with on the research side. I completely agree with, as a community, we should be, when we become aware of something, notifying responsible disclosure. I feel like we should make sure that we do it in a manner that protects the greater good, and there's a lot of ways to do that. What I think is different now than it used to be is that people are paying more attention to what we say than they ever did before. And maybe not the people we work for, okay? So you might not see that in a line of sight every day. And the baby doesn't bother, by the way, so feel free to be comfortable and do whatever you need to do. I've got a little one that's 1 year now. Is that 6 months? Congratulations. So I mean, I think the context of that on the research side was right. You know, Chris, I think that's spot on. But the problem to me is that I don't feel like that applies in this case, because it's really just quantification and it's blasted confirmation. What does that accomplish? I mean, it accomplishes really good sound bites in the media. It really gives a good quantification of the impact. But what did that drive? Did that really drive anything for anybody? The patch was already out, sir.
He let everyone know, maybe directly or indirectly, that they're vulnerable to that, because they include a link that this is, you're vulnerable to this.
Right. So if you is it his job to let people know? I'm just facilitating now. Okay. All right. Let me pause. This has been really interesting lately. So if my front door is unlocked and you drive through my neighborhood, you're not going to know until you come to my front door, attempt to breach my premises, open the front door, walk in, pick up the phone, and call and leave yourself a voicemail that then you can maybe forward to me later to tell me that, yes, I have proof that I got in and your front door was unlocked. Here it is. I'm calling, picking up the phone and pinging myself. Go ahead.
That's different. There's a requirement of physicality. Like, you have to be physically present. Where in the internet, everybody is present. Did you take it that far? Or is it that's almost like leaving us at the door? He went up to the door, tried it, hit the nose at the door. So he didn't take data, but didn't go to the phone. Which is that there's no actual contact with that. It's not the same.
Is it not? So this is the problem, right? This is a huge issue. What the hell is a ping? If you run remote, all right, so this is where I'm not geeky enough, okay? So I sound like a jackass, so just help me. How does the ping get executed in this case? Running code on my server. That's what I thought. Are you okay with some person running code on your server without permission? So Apache is okay? You can run code in my Apache instance and I'm not okay, and I'm okay with it? Is it? Is it? Okay, okay, so my door says, if you can get in through my door, you can, no. No. Chris, if your clients ask you if it's okay for somebody to run code arbitrarily in their Apache instance just because they didn't secure it properly, what would you say? Okay, okay, okay. Not according to me, man. You step on my grass and I'm going to shoot you. Live in Indiana, thank God. All right, so what? Here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing about. Did I hear somebody say they disagree? Who? Go ahead, sir. Maybe. Wait. Keep going with it. Let's assume yes. Lower than what? No, it's good. I understand in Nick's, but I was trying to see what people were. She agrees with you. Which to me is he walked in the door and phoned home. That's my opinion. Sir. So go ahead. Great point. So there's a threshold, right? But what sucks? We don't have any case law for this yet. Sir. Well, wait, but now you've also given everybody an indicator that now you don't even have to look. You just drive down the street and find all the pink notes. All right, so you're still sticking with your theory from before. It's just notification, and it's a good thing. Under a government charter to do so. Interesting, right? So should we have people who are out there acting as police under a government charter? Should the police have this ability to go out and rattle doorknobs and make sure the neighborhood's protected? This is getting like to the cyber CDC stuff that's being discussed right now. So back to legislation. You know, it's kind of exciting to see, right? So is that good or is that bad? I personally think it's a great idea, if done correctly. We don't even agree in this room amongst people who are practitioners in the same industry what the heck a ping means. Is it rattling a doorknob? Is it looking at the door? Is it leaving a note on the door? Is it going inside the door? We don't agree. How the hell are legislators going to agree?
Because you still come back to the same point, who watches the watchers? Some point, there's still back to how do I trust that person?
I'm skipping that one. That one's a rabbit hole. Yes. Yes, we spent by policy in our environment, in our SOC, we have to investigate any time that somebody trespasses, which is defined in our policy set a certain way, that we've done the legal definition for our team to know what that means to somebody. And so if somebody comes up and is on the property, I don't care if they rattle the front door or not, they're trespassing already. And so we have to be guardians against that, hence sheepdogs, right? So we're barking. And so in our case, we had to follow up on every single one of these and present the case, button it up, have it prepared so that their counsel and all these clients were ready to decide if they wanted to take action or not. That was our job. So yes, I'd say there was harm, but you're right. Is it hurting anybody to fly overhead with a drone and say who has fences and who doesn't? I don't know. It's a good question. Sir. And then it wouldn't be a researcher's job. In your argument, it's the job of that homeowner to protect themselves. Now it's a very delicate. So there's all these different things that come into play now. It's really damn sporty. This is a better beer conversation at some point, but it's. Well, illegal search directly pertains to law enforcement, so yeah. If he was law enforcement, right? Which I agree with, but that doesn't. But see, now you go out and it's very simple. You go to at the federal level and you say we're going to carve out under legal search, paragraph blah 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 blah, blah subset B blah blah blah, and then we say, hey, this does not pertain to the newly formed cyber CDC, who is able to go out for the general hygiene of all of our systems because it's to the greater good and protect our citizens from themselves. Maybe, maybe not, right? Yeah. Here's what's really exciting. Either we're going to get our shit together and get on the same page, or they're going to go ahead without us and they're screwed up worse than we would have. Real quick, there's some caveats there. Not just where you were is questionable depending upon things. So. Correct. So it becomes a global issue at that point, which is the same thing we have in all the other types of jurisprudence issues that we already deal with. So you are right. We have two problems. We have a local problem and we have a cyber NATO problem, right? I'd be terrified to try to conquer the cyber NATO one first, although the EU would have a strong influence in that space, and maybe it would get done faster, which would be embarrassing to the current administration. I don't know. Good point. So, thank you. So Chris Roberts is in the back, and I went and found him a little while ago, because literally we just finalized everything this afternoon on this talk. And I wanted to make sure he had a preview. because personally that was important to me. I wouldn't like to be up on somebody's slideshow and not know that I was going to be there. So we talked through this a little bit. I got some of his perspectives, so just wanted you all to be aware so you could kind of put your guns down for a minute and not feel like you had to shoot me on his behalf, all right? So we have our previous case, and we were torn on that, although the majority of people were in the same boat, just for what it's worth. The vote was basically like 3 to everybody else, which is cool. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, we're not judge and jury in here, so it's kind of exciting. All right, so how do we evaluate this versus it's on its own right, and then versus it's the other? And now this gets really touchy because the person we're talking about is sitting here. Now, I'd like to think that we talk about people, whether or not they're here or whether they're not, the same way. So let's focus. Well, I will. So, that's great. That's great. Somewhat. That's fine. Either way. Either way, because the fact pattern is still the same. So the facts are, right, Chris tweeted the tweet on the top left there, which led to some getting to know you opportunities with law enforcement and an associated affidavit. One of the things that concerns me about this particular one, and what I wanted to call out, is that while as I've asked around the industry, different people that have been around a long time, everybody believes that Chris definitely has his heart in the right place, which is really nice to see in here. So here's what I see, though. Of all the people in here who raised their hands and said they were hackers, a hacker told the FBI that he made the plane fly sideways after cracking the entertainment system. A well-known U.S. hacker, blah, 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 founder of his company. And during these statements, he said he had exploited vulnerabilities within this system while doing these things multiple times, etc. That's hard, you know, and regardless of what I think about Chris in one way or the other, it's hard because right now then it makes people say, my God, these hackers are just out there hacking planes. And that scares the shit out of people. Now, our research, my research, none of which has been published, by the way, and it will not be published. It's been shared with the right people, and then I don't know what happens with it, which is part of the problem, has found that there are some serious problems on a couple different architectures that are publicly available through the Patent Office on Google. And if you go look at this stuff and look at the controls they have in place, you're going to see that they're lacking. And so it's a pretty damn big deal. And these planes, my family will not be on until they fix those things. So, you know, that was something that we discovered a year ago. Did the stuff that I shared with the right people help? Hard to tell. I have no idea. Did the publicity that Chris got help? Hard to tell. Certainly increased awareness, like the Mandy and APT1 report did. So, you know, will he survive this in the end? I hope so. But it's tricky, right? So how do you evaluate, right? And you get all these people coming back and making comments, and, you know, I see remarks that are made that, you know, are making a joke out of it. And there's different, you know, when you think about going through adverse situations, the first thing you do after you're shot at or there's a near miss or something like that is you after you get done wiping yourself clean, you make a joke about it. So I've heard from people that I trust. And so making jokes is part of survival, you know, and part of going through the grieving process at times too. But it's really tricky because from the outside in, if I'm being a flip jerk, I look at this and without any context, I say, we've got some half-cocked hacker out there who's hacking planes and laughing about it. That really pisses me off. Sir?
Nobody focuses on that, and that's, to me, is more disturbing. And when I was at work and we were talking about this, that was the very first thing that I pulled out was, well, who's more at fault? Who's supposed to be getting on this aircraft, which is built to be safe, but yet it's not.
Yep, and the FAA issued warnings on this, and there's actually transactions back a couple years ago about some of these particular aircraft and some of the concerns they had with the in-flight entertainment and navigation systems, and they still are having the problems. So they don't. That's right. Because this was easy. Because he set himself up to be an easy target. I'm going to, when he's done with this point, I want to stop for a second. All right. I'm gonna rip a Band-Aid off and it's gonna hurt. It's because we have no freaking clue how to talk to people. We are failing to get our message across in this industry. All right, guys. So I'm getting the wrap up and you are? I agree. So I'm going to wrap this up in 2 seconds here. This is the wrap up on the slide, is we have to do better. You have to walk out of here with a clear definition of how you're going to do better, how you're going to communicate better, and how you're going to draw the lines and help lead other people to something better, or it's going to suck. And we're going to get kicked in the teeth, and we're going to get smeared in the media, and our lives are going to be miserable for the next 5 years. So I hope that you guys had a good time today on this. I really appreciate the interaction and discussion. And Chris, thanks so much for coming for this. I really appreciate it.